Now, the Orthodox monopoly on conversion to the Jewish faith in Israel has been one of the most vexing issues of religion and state for the Jewish state. And today, the High Court of Justice, in a landmark decision, ruled that the government must recognize conversions by the Reform and Masorti, or as conservative movements, done in Israel for the purposes of granting citizenship. Now, the decision arrives some 15 years after a petition was filed challenging the state's positions on conversions. The court noted in its ruling, "We abstained from dealing with this issue for close to 5 years out of respect for the position of the defendant to allow for the advancement of proper legislation on this issue. However, we cannot wait forever while the rights of people are held in the balance and legislation is not even on the horizon." While Interior Minister Aryeh Deri of the ultra-Orthodox Shas Party, among many politicians responding today, wrote, "The High Court's decision to recognize reform and conservative conversions is mistaken, very unfortunate, and will cause controversy and a severe societal rift. I promise to amend the law so that only conversion to halakha, religious law, Orthodox religious law, will be recognized by the state of Israel." Well, joining us for more now is Rabbi Gilad Kariv, candidate for the Israeli parliament in the Labour Party. He's a leader of the reform movement in Israel, could end up being the first reform rabbi to enter the Israeli parliament later this month, and he speaks to us from Tel Aviv. And Gilad, thanks for joining us again. Let me ask you, first of all, just get your reaction to the court's this potentially, certainly landmark decision today.
Yes. So, Shalom, this is definitely a joyous day for us in the reform movement, together with our partners in the Israeli conservative movement, but it's also a joyous day for Israelis and Jews around the world that strongly believe that the true meaning of having a Jewish and democratic state is that the state of Israel fully recognizes all streams of Judaism and act according to egalitarian standards towards all religious communities here in Israel and in the Jewish diaspora.
Right. Now, I read out Aryeh Deri's response. We've seen some other responses. For example, Naftali Bennett from the Orthodox Yamina Party criticizing the decision. Now, I don't know how much this decision will be on voters' minds, but it's likely that this coming election will be somewhat decisive in seeing how this decision is followed through or carried out by the government, especially if there is, for example, a majority that is really sort of representing the religious right in the parliament.
So first, let me say that the response of Aryeh Deri and the response of Naftali Bennett, and also the response of the Likud party, Prime Minister Netanyahu's party, are deeply disappointing and hypocritic. We need to understand that since the law of return was legislated in 1950, the Israeli Knesset rejected again and again and again all the attempts to hand the monopoly to the Orthodox establishment in Israel in this important arena of conversion and who is a Jew. And this is the fact. This is the constitutional and the legal reality. And in that regard, the Israeli government gave a monopoly to the chief rabbinate over conversions with no basis in the Israeli law. And the Supreme Court only forced the Israeli government to obey the Knesset law. Now, I truly hope that when the Israeli citizens approach for the fourth time the polls in less than 3 weeks, they will fully understand that those are critical elections, not only in regard to the way we're dealing with the pandemic, to the need to strengthen the social and economic infrastructures of the Israeli society, to promote a new process vis-a-vis the Palestinian Authority, but that they will also understand that those are critical, this is critical elections in regards to religion and state matters. There is a solid majority among the Israelis that support Jewish diversity, religious pluralism, freedom of religion and conscience. There is a solid majority that supports the Supreme Court decision, that supports having civil marriage and divorce in the democratic state of the Jewish people, and only the structure of the Israeli political system allows a minority. Aryeh Deri represents a minority in the Israeli society and in the entire Jewish people. And only the structural failures of our system allow this monopoly to control Israeli Judaism. And in that regard, I truly hope that Aryeh Deri understands that the Israeli public is not going to support any legislative move to hand the monopoly to the chief rabbinate. On the contrary, we will work day and night as a member of the Labour Party, as a candidate of the Labour Party. We will work day and night to promote civil marriage and divorce as the next step.
Okay, well, that would be a big step. But I actually want to ask you now a little about the Jewish diaspora. Now, of course, Orthodox and non-Orthodox conversions have been accepted. Those performed ironically abroad have been accepted as basis for citizenship until now. Now, as you heard, Aryeh Deri saying we want to bring a legislation that would make only Orthodox conversions accepted for that purpose, including perhaps canceling those conversions abroad. So what would be the impact, you think, if that would go through?
So again, we see the deep linkage between the domestic question of recognizing the non-Orthodox communities and the relations between the State of Israel and world Jewry. And I'm glad that Aryeh Deri didn't present a distinction between non-Orthodox conversions overseas and in Israel, because we want the leadership of the Jewish communities around the world to understand that if the ultra-Orthodox parties succeed to push a conversion legislation, it will go after the conservative and reform and reconstructionist conversions overseas. And they are trying actually to reverse not the current Supreme Court ruling, but all the rulings that were given in the last 40 years. Now,
well, we'll have to.
I'm sure that all of us understand that the sky didn't fall in the last 40 years when the Jewish state welcomed Jews by choice from reform communities overseas. It will be the same case in Israel.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Rabbi Gilad Kariv, thank you for joining us on The Rundown. And